Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to continue my conversation about boundaries. So February is all about the boundaries that we have, our personal boundaries, how they show up in our romantic relationships, how we use them throughout any area of our lives. Now, in last week's video, I talked about the overgiving side of boundaries. And this week, I want to talk about the other side of the overgiving of boundaries. So in the last video, I said, if you're the type of person who is always overgiving of yourselves in relationships, you will always have on the other end somebody who's taking what you've got to give, and you feel taken advantage of, not appreciated. You start to lose yourself in your relationship, and things just go horribly wrong, and you're unhappy. So in this video, I'm talking about the person who is doing all of the taking, and I'm calling them the victim, although they aren't the victim. But what happens is they are not taking responsibility for their own actions, inactions, their thoughts, their feelings, emotions. They're actually letting somebody else be responsible for all of that. And that plays out in a lot of different dynamics. It shows up in family situations, not just family situations, all situations where the guilt trip is a classic example of somebody who is playing the victim, right? So when you want to do something, for example, and somebody says, well, don't do that because then I'll be all alone, or don't move there because then I'll really miss you, that type of stuff, right? So that person is playing the victim and not taking on personal responsibility for their part in the relationship. And the thing that happens in these two dynamics, usually, and I've said it in that previous video as well, usually somebody who is the overgiver is always going to attract somebody who's going to be the taker, the ones that don't want to be responsible for their own actions. The giver is always taking responsibility for their feelings and actions, and that person isn't taking responsibility for their own feelings and actions. I hope that you're following along with me. My nose just got itchy all of a sudden. Okay, so back to this person who is doing all of the taking and the guilt tripping and things like that. The thing about this dynamic, again, it neither person is wrong, neither person is right. It just is what it is, and it's all attributed to how that person feels about themselves. In either case, how do you feel about yourself? What is your level of self-confidence and self-worth? Because the more self-confidence and self-worth and self-esteem we have, the easier it is for us to be responsible just for ourselves in terms of our feelings and our thoughts and our emotions, our ability to delineate between where I stop and where you start, so that you maintain individuality and you be responsible for your own stuff. And the dynamic between these two people is really interesting, because what happens is the fixer is always looking to be responsible for the victim, and the victim never has the opportunity to do their own inner work so that they can grow, so that they can learn, so that they can realize that they don't need to play that role, that people are going to love them. People are going to love you. If you're resonating with this side of the boundaries equation, people are going to love you when you take responsibility for yourself. When you don't place the responsibility for what happens to you in your life on your boss or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or the situation might be contributing to something bigger that is like really hard to deal with. I acknowledge that, but at the end of the day, we still have to be responsible for ourselves in that we created that situation. That's a really, really tough one for people to hear, that we are responsible for what is going on in our lives and within our relationships. And there is a way to create fluidity and harmony within the relationship, but it starts with being able to have really healthy personal boundaries. This is where I end. This is where you begin. There are going to be times where you're going to be able to do something for somebody else, and then other times it just goes against your values and your morals and what it is that you want for yourself and in your life. And, that's where you have that personal boundary. It can all be communicated in a very loving way, but on either side, we have to own who we are and how we feel and be responsible for our lives. We can't just let somebody else be solely responsible for our lives and what goes on in our lives. We can't play the victim. We can't blame other people constantly for our own shortcomings and misgivings and then expect somebody else to be responsible for it. That inhibits our own growth. That inhibits our own growth in terms of our self-worth, our self-confidence, our self-love, our self-esteem, because in either situation, if depending on, regardless of what side you're on, it is just a reflection of how you feel on the inside and feeling that you have to do certain things or behave certain ways in order to get love. Are you needy for love, or do you push it away? If you're pushing it away, that's usually when you're in that victim role. Not always, but oftentimes. So as you think about where you sit on either side of this equation, ask yourself, am I respecting myself and being responsible for myself and what is good for me and how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking? Or am I making somebody else responsible for that? Or am I trying to get something from somebody else that I feel is missing within myself? Those are really important questions to ask yourself. And this has to do with, this will require you to be conscious about what it is that you're doing. I hope this video has been helpful. I hope it's resonated on one side or the other. Leave a comment below and I will link last week's video right there for you to watch. Until I see you again, take good care. Bye.